I have no chill. I need somebody to come here and save me from myself and say like, Brittany, you are doing so many reading challenges. You do not need to do another one. Please help me. Hello beautiful friends, my name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm so glad this video found you. Today we are here to do some planning for HRCYED 2.0. That is the hardest reading challenge you will ever do. If you're not familiar, this is a challenge that is created by Stephanie over at QWERTY. She introduced it last year and it's a year-long challenge. It starts on her birthday. So it started on July 7th of last year and it's going to July 6th of this year. And so round 2 again is going to start on July 7th of this year. Although you can start early, you just have to make sure you're not giving yourself extra time. So if you're going to start it early, you have to end it early. And I do plan on starting it on July 1st and ending it on June 30th. And essentially the point of this challenge is really to push you outside of your comfort zone and make sure that you are intentionally picking up things that challenge you that you might not otherwise read. Stephanie has put a lot of work into this challenge. And so if you want to learn more about it, I'm going to leave her channel and her announcement video down below in case you are interested. She's also created a full-on website for this challenge. She's also created a very detailed spreadsheet as well as a detailed FAQ sheet. And she also did a live answering a bunch of questions. So there is a ton of amazing information out there that Stephanie, again, put a lot of work into. And so please feel free to check out those links in case you are interested. But essentially what I want to do today is kind of run through, I'm calling them like challenges within the challenge and then the prompts associated with each individual challenge. Like I said, it'll make a little bit more sense once we actually get further into it. I plan on talking briefly about each one and kind of what I have tentatively planned for each prompt if I do have something planned. I don't have something planned for each area. In fact, I know that I'm going to need some help in certain areas. So I'm going to need your recommendations and we will get to that. What I plan on doing is actually taking you out into the common area where my desk is so that I can record my screen and it'll pull up the spreadsheet and all of the tabs and everything like that. So we're going to go ahead and switch locations and get right into it. All right, everyone. So I am out here in my common area because this is where my desk and my computer are. What I want to do is I want to record my screen so that you can see the spreadsheet, all of the challenges and individual prompts and anything that I am currently tentatively planning to read for each one. All right, so my screen is recording. If you see me looking this way, it is because that is where my screen is, obviously. So I apologize, I won't be looking at you for the whole thing, but here we are on the introduction tab of the spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is so detailed and elaborate, y'all. I am very impressed. Here you have the bingo board. So this is basically every single one of the individual challenges within the larger reading challenge, and then we will go ahead and click into each one to see the prompts that are associated with each individual challenge. What's really cool about this portion of the spreadsheet is if you just click onto one of them, you're going to be able to be taken to the individual tab, and that's really cool. And when you mark I did it and you go back to the bingo board, it actually highlights as green, which is really clever. I absolutely love that. So please be sure to check out this spreadsheet if you have not already done so. It is going to be incredibly helpful. Here we have the tracker where you're going to be able to put in all the books that you read and which prompts that you read them for. Now you can use one book for 2 different prompts and no more. Now I am not doing the point system, so I actually have the tab hidden here where you can track your books and calculate the points that you earn for each one. Now it could be a reward with the points that you might be able to use one book for more than 2 prompts. I am not entirely sure. Again, please be sure to check out QWERTY's announcement video and all of the rules, the FAQ and all of that stuff for more information, especially if you plan on calculating prompts, because I do not plan on calculating prompts. And then here is where you're going to see all of the stats for the challenge as you are doing that. So this is all very elaborate. I love me a good spreadsheet, so I'm very appreciative of Stephanie for creating this. So now it's time to go ahead and get into the individual challenges, starting with by the 100s. And this is really self-explanatory. You essentially have to read a book with a page count in these page ranges. So 100 through 199, 2 through 299, 3, 399, etc. With this last one, you can just read any book over 700 pages. It can be more than 800 pages if you really wanted it to be. I don't have anything planned for this because this is something that I'm going to be able to naturally satisfy during the course of my reading. I don't feel the need to pre-plan it. I'm going to be able to get through all of them pretty easily, so I'm not really worried about that. That's probably one of the easiest parts of this challenge for me. The 24-hour readathon is one. Let me go ahead and unclick the I did it box. The premise of this is that you read as much as you can within a 24-hour period. It essentially ends when you decide to go to sleep. So you can't go to sleep and then pick it back up and make it a total of 24 hours across multiple days. It has to be within one 24 24-hour period. So I think my plan right now is to wake up my normal time on a weekend, like maybe around 7, and then try to go to sleep around 1 a.m. That's pretty late for me. I'm fairly elderly at this point, and my bedtime is typically around 10 o'clock. So going to bed at 1 is pretty late. It's also a challenge for me because on the weekends, I'm doing a lot of other things. I'm not just focused on reading. And so I'm going to have to like specifically try to get maybe a lot of shorter books done during this time. So this will be an interesting challenge to try to satisfy. Okay, next we have subgenres of choice. And this basically means that you choose one of the main genres that you read and you select 6 subgenres within that main genre. I chose fantasy because not only is that one of the main genres I read, but I feel like that's going to be one of the easiest genres to pick a subgenre of because I naturally read so many subgenres of fantasy. These are not set in stone, but currently right now I have romance. I do enjoy me a good fantasy romance, not so much romantasy, but fantasy romance. If you do distinguish them, apparently there is a difference. I prefer a lot of fantasy and a little bit of romance. Magical realism, I do tend to like me a good magical realism, so I'm going to keep that there. Cozy, y'all know that I'm not a big cozy fantasy reader. However, the Assistant to the Villain series is one of my favorite series of all time. I absolutely love those characters, and the next book in that series is coming out in August, so really soon, and I'm going to be able to read that and satisfy the cozy fantasy prompt immediately. Dystopian fantasy, I do want to read Silver Elite by Danny Francis, but this is not a book that is going to satisfy like really a lot of the other challenges that I'm doing, so I could replace this with something else. Like I said, none of this is set in stone, but that's just kind of what I immediately thought of when I thought of a subgenre was the dystopian and Silver Elite. Thriller, I have The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I do believe that this contains like a murder mystery or something to that effect. It does have the thriller tag on Goodreads. This I'm primarily reading because it's going to satisfy an R fantasy bingo prompt of the like biotechnology biopunk. That is a prompt that I had a really difficult time finding anything for. This book, The Tainted Cup, was not on my radar at all. I don't even know if I'm necessarily super interested in it, but I had a hard time finding anything else, and I've heard nothing but rave reviews about this book. And so I wanted to go ahead and give it a shot, and it will also satisfy this. Of course, I'm trying to double up as much as possible so that I'm working smarter and not harder. And then for the lit RPG, of course, we have Dungeon Crawler Carl. I just finished the first book a couple weeks ago, and I absolutely loved it. I had a great time, and I plan on continuing in the second book as soon as possible. So if I can use that to satisfy this, I absolutely will. Series Staircase. So this one, when I heard about it, I gave a little bit of a grumble. I have started and finished at least 2 or 3 duologies already this year, and I don't have any on my immediate radar at the moment. And so when I found out about the Series Staircase, I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I know about this challenge ahead of time? I would have saved one of these duologies. But essentially, it's pretty self-explanatory. You start with a standalone. You have a standalone, and that can literally be almost anything, right? Then you have to start and finish a duology, which is 2 books, a trilogy, which is 3, and then you have to read a series that has 4 or more books. So you can have already started that series, but it has to have at least 4 more books in the series for you to count this. So for duology, like I said, I didn't have anything else on my immediate radar. Flame and Sparrow, this is actually something that I may be utilizing for our fantasy as well to satisfy the elves/dwarves prompt, and that was very hard for me as well, but I've heard really great things about this one. If you have any other duology recommendations for me, I would love to hear them, or even anything to satisfy that elves/dwarves prompt for our fantasy bingo. Y'all, I need all the help. Trilogies, this is another one that I had a little bit of a difficult time with because I don't have very many trilogies on my radar at the moment, but The Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent, I do believe that is a trilogy. Fallen Gods by Hannah Kaner, I think that I'm more likely to start this one. Now, this is one that is only on my radar because a couple of booktubers that I follow really love this series, and it will satisfy, again, an R fantasy bingo prompt of gods and pantheons. And so if I can start this and I really enjoy it, then I can use the first book for our fantasy bingo and then finish the trilogy in the same year that I start it, which is always a goal. We don't want to have too many out of control series, right? The 4 or More was also a challenge, but I do have several options for this. So the Will Trent series by Karen Slaughter, that has 12 books, and I think I've only read 2. I'm about to read the 3rd one in July, and so there are easily 4 more books that I can read. And a benefit of this series is that it is a thriller series, and so these books are not going to take me too terribly long to get through, and so I think that would be a smart choice. I do also have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, but those are chunkier fantasies, and I don't think it would be wise to try to commit to that. But I also do have Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I know that the books get longer as the series goes, but they're just so much fun and fast, and I would be listening to the audiobook, and I don't necessarily think it would take me too terribly long to get through these either. So right now I'm debating between Will Trent and Dungeon Crawler Carl, but either one of them would work. Award season. This is a fun one because essentially you have to read a book that was a winner, a finalist, a semifinalist, or an entrant in a bookish award of some kind. Now, my understanding is that you have to read at least one book from each category, but then once you've done that, it doesn't really matter. So I have to read one winner, one finalist, one semifinalist, and one entrant. The other three, I can do whatever I want. So if I wanted to read 3 more winners, I could. Could be incorrect about that. If you think I'm incorrect, please correct me. But I am naturally just going to use the book of the year as well as the Goodreads choice because those are the ones that I'm naturally reading anyway. I mean, I'm doing a whole damn project on the book of the year finalists, so I think I'm going to stick with book of the year or Goodreads choice. But if you do know of any other awards that have like semifinalists, please let me know. TBR Game Challenge. I like this one as well. And essentially what I have to do is I have to watch a booktuber with the TBR game. I cannot use my own TBR game, but I do have one, obviously. So if you want to use my TBR game for this, I would be completely honored. And essentially I either have to play that TBR game or like maybe watch them play around and then utilize the prompts that they get. I haven't officially decided on which booktuber I'm going to use, but I'm leaning towards TBR Bluff that was created by Mel over at Mel Lenore Reads because I think that would be the easiest one for me to play myself if I wanted to do that. But again, I have many booktubers that I watch that play TBR games, including Brie from 4 Paws in a Book, Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading, Leandra from Leandra the TBR Zero. I have plenty of options to choose from this. I just have to decide what month I want to do this because I would be doing this in replacement of playing my own TBR game, of course. The last 10 years. So this is actually one that I thought was going to be slightly easier than it ended up being, simply because the ultimate goal of this is to read a book for every single year since 2015. So you can either do 2015 to 2025 or 2016 to 2026. I think I'm actually just going to do 2015 to 2026. It's not going to be too terribly difficult, but I have found that since for the past couple of years, I've been diligently working on my backlist, like really legitimately working on my backlist, that a lot of the books that were published in older years like 2015, 16, etc., those are books that I don't necessarily have a lot of on my TBR. And this is another one that kind of made me grumble a little bit because I am doing that book of the year finalist project and I just got done reading a bunch of books that were published in 2016 and 2017 and I was like, why did I not know about this challenge at that point? But luckily, I don't necessarily think it's going to be too terribly hard. Currently, the only book I have on my TBR that was published in 2015 is the Bone Season book number 2. I do need to continue that series. It's been a while since I read book 1, so hopefully that won't be too terribly difficult. 2016 was one that I didn't actually have anything actively on my TBR, but Every Heart a Doorway I'm putting on here because my understanding is that this book features ace representation and that's going to help me in another one of these challenges. The Wayward Children series is not a series that I ever had any interest in. Even today, I think it's at like book number 11 or 12 and I still have had no interest in picking this up. It's very, very beloved. I will say a lot of people really love this, but these short novella type stories, they just aren't my thing. And I think these are very Portal Fantasy-esque, which are not necessarily my favorite. So I'm hesitant about this one, but it is short. It will help me satisfy another challenge and it will satisfy the 2016 year. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. I don't have to continue. You know what I mean? But it could be an easy way to satisfy this. 2017, Kings of the Wild, one of the only books on my TBR that was published in 2017. 2018 was another year that I struggled with, but luckily the second book in the Caraval series, Legendary, was published in 2018. I just started the series this year, so that works out. 2019 is going to be no problem because of the 2019 Book of the Year finalists that I still have to read. Same with 2020. I have to read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, so if nothing else, those will satisfy this category. 2021 Dungeon Crawler Carl 2 will absolutely satisfy this. 2022, I have The Lincoln Highway again for the Book of the Year finalist prompts, but I'm not confident about that book yet. I DNF'd A Gentleman in Moscow. I have a feeling I'll DNF The Lincoln Highway. I'm absolutely going to give it a fair shot, and I really do hope that it works out better for me, but I'm not counting my chickens. You know what I mean? 2023, I put Hellbent, which is the second book in the Alex Stern series by Lee Bardugo, because I am going to be reading that for the Aurelian Project as well, so that will work. And then 2024, 25, 26 are going to be very easy. I'm not going to have to worry about those at all. Okay, moving on into adaptations. So my understanding is with this, you can either read the source material for an adaptation or you can watch the adaptation, but you don't have to do both, which is really good because certain ones like graphic novel, comic, I don't really read those, and so it's going to be a lot easier for me to just watch the adaptation. Currently, I think what I'm going to be watching for this is The Losers. For the musical, I'm going to be using Alexander Hamilton, which I'm also hopefully going to be using for nonfiction. This is a chunky biography, my friends, a chunky biography, but I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to persevere, so we are going to see. I don't have anything for the modern retelling I would be interested interested in feedback, as well as for play. I think the easiest for this would be to maybe watch a Shakespeare movie. TV show, I have a couple of options, including the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, as well as Daisy Jones, but I'm also going to include Murderbot here because I may be reading Murderbot for another prompt. So I may use like Murderbot for this. I'm not entirely sure. Web series is going to be another difficult one for me. I'm going to have to find a web series and then like read the source material because I can't imagine dedicating the time to actually watch the web series. Animation is another one I'm going to struggle with. I'm not a big animation person, but it's more likely that I'm going to want to watch the animation than read the source material. Movie, I have plenty of options for this. I'm not worried at all, so I don't really feel the need to plan for that. Disability challenge. This is one where I think I'm really going to need your help. Basically, I need to read 5 books, and each one I do believe needs to feature a different disability. This can include mental disability, not just physical disability. So I would love any recommendations because, as you can see, I don't have anything planned for this at this time. Similarly, I don't have anything planned for the most part for Heritage Months, but this is really something that I do feel I can potentially satisfy during the natural course of my reading. I am going to be reading A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Room for July, and that's going to satisfy Arab heritage, so I'm not really worried about that, but any recommendations would be very, very much appreciated. As well as recommendations for translation challenge. I am not a translation reader. I typically do feel like things get lost in translation, and so I don't necessarily enjoy translations as much, but I do have some potential books here, especially Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, which I have to read anyway, and I am really intrigued by his newest release. I Who Have Never Known Men is a French translation. This has been going around, y'all. This was published 30 years ago, and it's gotten a really big resurgence lately. This would also satisfy something for our fantasy bingo, so I may go ahead and use that. I'm not entirely sure. I have Count of Monte Cristo and Shadow of the Wind here, but y'all, those are big, chunky commitments, and I don't know if I want to go there. So any translation help would be very appreciated as well. Around the World is another one that I don't necessarily have anything planned for at this time, but again, I do feel for the most part I'm going to be able to easily satisfy this in the natural course of my reading, so I'm not too terribly concerned. The Even Bigger Rainbow is pretty self-explanatory. I have to find books with colors that are 50% or more of each of these colors: red, orange, yellow, green, teal, light blue, blue, purple, pink, black, white, silver, gold, or 7+ colors. This is another one I'm not too terribly worried about. Make a quote. This is a really fun one, y'all. So basically what you have to do is you have to pick a quote, and then you have to pick one book for each word of the quote. So I am basically going to do a quote from Hamilton, and right now I have I Hope That You Burn, which is from the song Burn from Hamilton, which is actually one of my favorite songs of all time. It's one of my favorite moments in that whole musical. But I am also considering I Will Kill Your Friends and Family to Remind You of My Love, because I love King George. He's my favorite character in that whole musical. He just makes me so happy when I see him. Like, I get the giggles every time I see him, so I wanted one of his quotes. That one would definitely be a lot longer and a lot more challenging to satisfy, so I don't know about that one, but right now I do have I Hope That You Burn. Spooky creatures. So I have to read a book that features a vampire, a shifter, a magic user like a witch, fae folk, spirit, merfolk, zombie, and other creature. I feel like vampires, magic users, and fae folk are going to be the easiest ones for me to satisfy. Merfolk, another grumble moment for me because I've literally read 2 or 3 books already this year that feature mermaids and sirens, and so this was another one like, oh my gosh, why didn't I know of this challenge ahead of time? Zombies could be a little bit difficult for me. I might need your assistance with that. Become the Avatar. So you have to read a book with water, earth, air, fire in the title or the cover. You can't switch back and forth. So if you want to do cover elements, then you can, or title elements, you can. But if you want to do both, you have to do both for all of them. I think that I am going to go ahead and do the cover, and I'm going to start with King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby because that actually has full-on fire on the cover. So we are going to see about that. I might end up doing both. Who knows? I might end up being able to do both naturally, but right now I am aiming for just the cover elements. Readathon challenge. This is literally picking a readathon and satisfying the prompts from that readathon. Now y'all know that I'm doing the Aurelium project. I'm starting from the beginning with Spring Equinox 2022, and I'm going all the way until the upcoming one, August of 2025. And so that's what I'm just going to use for this. I'm just going to mark down any book that I read here for Aurelium for as long as I do it, and that will more than satisfy this probably. Animal friends. So I have to read a book with house pets, exotic pets, farm animals, wild animals, zoo animals. House pets I think are going to be pretty easy. I mean, like Dungeon Crawler Carl has a main character that's a cat. I'm not really worried about that, but these have to be like pretty prominently featured animals. They can't just be mentioned once or twice and done. So I feel like I'm going to struggle with that, especially with regard to farm animals and possibly exotic pets. So once again, I would love any of your recommendations for these. Then we have the Even Bigger Queer Alphabet. So I have to read books with protagonists that are gay, lesbian, bi or pan, transgender, intersex, asexual, polyamory, non-binary / agender, and then gender fluid / two-spirit. I was having some problems with some of these, especially like gender fluid, because a lot of people are using that synonymously with non-binary. And I know that non-binary can be an umbrella term that encompasses gender fluid, but for the sake of this, they have to be 2 distinct things. Gay and lesbian, I really don't think it's going to be a problem. I do plan on reading Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, which features lesbian vampires. So that right there would satisfy the lesbian representation as well as the vampire. Bisexual, I don't also feel like that will be a problem. Transgender could be a challenge, but I do believe I can also read books by authors that identify as trans or intersex or asexual. They don't necessarily have to feature characters of that same orientation. So I do believe that I'm going to try Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, who is a trans woman. And I've heard a lot of really great things about this story. It was never on my radar before, but Becca from Becca and the Books really likes this series, so I think I'm going to give it a try. Intersex, I think that's going to be one of the more challenging ones. The only one that I found was Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides, and that would be definitely a challenge to tackle. Asexual, here's that representation for Every Hearted Doorway. If you have any good ace representation, I would love to hear it, as well as polyamory. I don't really read like Why Choose or polyamory romances or anything like that, so I could use your help for this one. Non-binary, here's where we get into Murderbot. I know that Murderbot is a non-binary character, and thanks to Brie at Four Pods in a Book, she did tell me that the angels in Small Miracles are considered gender fluid. So I think that I am going to go ahead and use that for this. For this challenge, you just have to repeat your favorite prompt from HRCYED 1. I didn't participate in HRCYED 1, but she kindly listed all of the different challenges here. And the one that I think that I am going to go for is 5 books with the lowest ratings on your Goodreads Storygraph TBR list. I have done like vlogs before of reading the lowest rated on my Goodreads TBR, so it might be fun to do that again. But because I've gotten so good at really curating what I add to my Goodreads want to read list, I really don't feel like I have any super lowly rated books. I think like the lowest rated book I have on Goodreads is 3.7. And really that's a threshold for me. Like any books below a 3.7, I'm likely not going to waste my time on. So that could just be fun to just read the 5 lowest books on my TBR, and I could do a vlog out of it if I wanted to. So I think that I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that would only be 5 books. So that's not really a big deal. BIPOC challenge, you have to read 10 books by 10 different authors with that BIPOC representation. This is another one that I really feel like I'm going to be able to satisfy during the natural course of my reading. I have read a lot of amazing books this year by BIPOC authors, but yes, so if you have any good recommendations you want to give me, that's great. But again, I don't think I'm going to have a too terribly difficult time satisfying this prompt. Another one that I'm going to easily be able to do is new releases. And so essentially with this, you have to read a book within the month that it was released, or at least within 60 days of its release. I believe that's the new rule for this. Y'all know that because I try to keep my physical TBR down, whenever I have a book come to me that I haven't read, I try to read it as soon as possible. And that includes Book of the Month. And basically every single Book of the Month book is a brand new release and that I'm likely not going to have read. And so this is not going to be a problem at all. I'm probably going to be able to satisfy this with Book of the Month. And if not, then the highly anticipated releases that I have, because I am working on those still as well. In fact, I have several coming up that I'm going to be reading in like July that came out in June and July. So this is going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now challenge yourself. Now this is purely individualized. You can select a challenge for you personally, and you just have to read 10 books or do something 10 times in order to satisfy the challenge. Because I'm doing so many different other reading challenges and projects, I'm just going to use like one of those, right? Like, so as you can see here, down here, I have the different books for the remaining Book of the Year finalists that I have to read. And then I have 4 more. I am also doing a project at this time that you guys know nothing about. So I could use 4 books from that. I could also use 4 our fantasy bingo prompts here, because that's another challenge that I'm doing. There's a lot that I can utilize for this. So we're going to be able to satisfy this no problem. Nonfiction is another one that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of, but I do plan on using Alexander Hamilton for this. And that's going to be a big one, y'all. I'm just going to have to like push through and get through that. I really do think that I am going to enjoy it, but I do know that it is going to be like kind of dry, especially because of how long it is and how very, very detailed it is. So we're going to see. We're going to try to get through it. But some of the other ones that I have here, The Comfort of Crows is a nature-based book, and this just recently came on my radar when I was doing a search for this challenge. It was a Reese's Book Club selection, and from what I'm understanding, it contains 52 short stories, one for every single week of the year. And it's about the author's kind of experiences with just the plants and the animals and creatures and insects that are in her backyard. And it's all about like respect for nature. And one of the reasons why I selected this, even though it's not something that I would ever decided to pick up, is because there was a line in the story that I saw in one of the reviews about ecological grief, and like how the least that we can do is be a witness to some of the damage that we are creating in this world. Just like reading that sentence caused me to cry. Like I was almost about a sobbing mess. Like I'm almost a sobbing mess right now just thinking about it. I feel that deeply. And like ecological grief, that is never a term that I'd heard of before. And it encompasses specifically how I feel as somebody who absolutely loves and respects nature and feels deeply connected to nature, even though I don't get to spend nearly enough time in it. Like, I hardly see nature on my day-to-day, but I love and respect nature. Like, nature is my higher power. And so I really felt like I was going to connect deeply with this. And so that's why it's on my radar. The Woman They Could Not Silence, which is history. It's by the same person who wrote The Radium Girls, and that was a wild story, y'all. I'm also looking for some good true crime. Y'all know how I feel about true crime. I love true crime. So if you have some good true crime recommendations, I would love to hear. And then I also have Cultish. Now, this is one that I've seen going around. A lot of people love this. It's basically concerning the language of fanaticism and how people get roped into cults even today. Even very smart, intelligent people get roped into cults even today. And I've always found that really fascinating. And so that's one of the reasons why I have this on my radar. So again, I would love your recommendations for any nonfiction that you think that I could enjoy as a nonfiction girly. The very final thing that I have to satisfy is Q's recommendations. So we have to read a book that she has put into a mini review, a full reading vlog, and then either a YouTube short, TikTok, or Instagram reel. That is the extent of it. All right, y'all. Well, that definitely took me a lot longer than I was expecting to go through all of that. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to future Brittany, who will be opening and closing this video, but I would love all of your recommendations down below. And I would love to know if you are participating in HRCYED 2.0. All right, everyone, that is it. That is the HRCYED 2.0 challenge and what I tentatively have planned to read for the prompts that I have actually pre-planned for. But again, there are plenty of spaces that I don't have anything planned for, and I would love, love, love your thoughts and recommendations. Now, I'm actually finishing the introduction and closing of this video after I have already filmed the planning portion of it. And so what I didn't know at the time, because I hadn't joined the Discord community until now, that is something that I forgot to mention in the introduction. There is a Discord community, and I highly recommend you join because this is a great space to connect with other people who are participating and who can give you recommendations if you need them. But what I didn't know until I joined the Discord community is that there are going to be secret prompts, and I believe the plan is to do one secret prompt a month. And when she announces those prompts, you can use one of them to replace a prompt that maybe you don't want to satisfy or that you're having a lot of difficulty satisfying. So for example, say that I don't want to have to read a 700+ page book for the By the 100s challenge. I can utilize one of the secret prompts to replace that individual prompt. As of right now, my plan is to kind of keep an eye on these secret prompt drops to figure out if I do want to satisfy one of those over one of the other standard prompts that she's included in the challenge. Now, she has gone ahead and dropped the first secret prompt, but I don't necessarily know if this is something that's supposed to be public or if it's exclusive to the Discord community, so I'm not going to say anything about it now. But essentially, this secret prompt runs from July 7th to July 31st, and I do think that I'm going to attempt to satisfy this to kind of give me a little bit of flexibility. I love that she's incorporating this. Like I said, she has put a lot of thought, time, and effort into this challenge, and I love the motivation behind it. I love the goal behind it, and especially this year, which is focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm looking forward to finding books to satisfy these prompts. And again, I'm always willing to take your feedback on the ones that I need help with, or even the ones that I don't need help with. Like, if you have some good recommendations for books that I already have tentatively planned, I would love to hear them. And I would also love to know if you are participating in HRCYED. Are you going to be joining this incredibly wild challenge? I would love to know. Please leave that down below. If you have like any kind of planning video out, I would love to watch that as well. And I would love to see you in that Discord community. Or if you have made it to the end of this video and you are not feeling chatty, go ahead and leave me like that brain explosion emoji, because that is how my mind feels after several days of deep diving and planning for HRCYED 2, along with all of the other challenges that I'm currently doing. If you've been on my channel for a while, you'll know that I'm doing several reading challenges and projects, like reading the Book of the Year finalists, doing Aurelium from the very beginning, doing Our Fantasy Bingo, which I do have a video out about. So I'm doing quite a lot in my reading life. But if there's one thing that I've learned this year, especially when doing things like reading the best books of 2024 according to BookTube, when a lot of those were not on my radar, I would have never read them if it hadn't been for that project. And some of them are going to be my favorite books of the year. And so I highly, highly believe in pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone with reading, because you just never know what you're going to discover. But I do feel like my brain is kind of mush now after planning for HRCYED 2 and all of the other reading challenges that I'm doing. So please leave me the mind explosion emoji. And as always, if you like this video or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I typically post 2 videos a week, one on Wednesdays, one on Sundays, and I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos. Y'all know that I love talking with you on the comments. It just makes my heart so happy anytime I see you comment. But if you would prefer to connect with me outside of BookTube, you can always find links to my Goodreads, Instagram, Patreon, and YouTube memberships down below, along with any books talked about in a video. Until next time, y'all. Bye.